Welcome back, everybody. It's time we get into the Farmall H engine again. We found that loose sleeve the last time. So I've developed a plan, hatched a plan I should say, for getting into that, really giving it a good inspection once over and securing it back in place, providing we don't find anything wrong. The only trouble is, it's going to involve me removing the oil pan, and I used a very high-grade sealer when I put this together, because I want to make sure that pan gasket would never leak. Well, that didn't really work out because that sealer is high-grade to the point that you don't really want to have to take the pieces back apart that you glue together with it. So we're having to sacrifice the entire gasket in order not to gouge the block or mangle the pan. Oh, the fun we have. Notice the white dot identifying sleeve position in relation to engine block. It doesn't move that easy. It does move though. Just been working it. I'd like to pull it out, but if I can't pull it all the way by hand, I'm not putting tools on it. There we go. There, we got it. Okay, we have a lot to go through, so let's get into it. My plan. So far, it's been working out. I pulled the sleeve with the piston and the rod all as one piece. Doing that, I disturbed the position of the rings against the cylinder wall in the least amount possible. All right, this has worn in. It's all happy. I just want to leave it intact as much as I can. This is kind of crazy that I've got this much of this engine apart. Definitely didn't plan on this, but just a quick inspection of everything. Rod bearing still looks like brand new. Of course, the bottom of the cap doesn't take the thrust. Here's the main thrust for the rod bearing right here. A little bit of polishing right there at the top, but otherwise, bearing and everything looks really good. Cleaned the sleeve, both inside and out. I don't see any issues with it at all. No cracks, no wear. Machining marks are still visible. You can still roll your thumb across them. I don't see a reason why we need to replace this other than the loose fit. We'll get to that in a second. Piston has excellent grip on the sleeve yet, maintains position all on its own. So take a look down at the skirt, the backside. Everything looks really good in there. Good crosshatch, no scoring. Also, we take a look at everything on top. Clean the carbon out of here. Again, no cracking, no visible wear. We still have crosshatch through the uppermost ring travel where the top ring stops and changes direction. That's typically where you get the most wear on a cylinder wall. Really nothing there. So looking the way it does, yeah, really happy with the condition of everything here. And looking at the block, this is where the story starts to come together a little bit more. So the parent bore looks good all the way down to the bottom. Counter bore at the top looks good as well. We can sight straight down, see that rod journal. Crankshaft also looks like it's in good shape. But now look at the letter stampings next to each cylinder. Number 1 has a C. Number 2 is also a C. Number 3, though, is an E. And number 4 is another C. Now, we went through those letter stampings and their meanings back in the Farmall Super M restoration series that can still be seen on the channel here. But for those who have bailed on since then, I'll do a quick recap. So when IH was machining these engine blocks back in the day, not every one of those holes ended up being the same size. So they would go along after the machining and measure each one. And they would assign each one a letter stamp. They had 5 different letter stamps, A, B, C, D, and E. And A stamps were on like the smaller end of the spec, and the E stamps were on the largest end of the spec. So when they would assemble the engine, they had cylinder sleeves that were sized appropriately for the A stamps, for the B's, for the C's, the D's, and the E's. And that's how they would ensure that they had a proper fit of each sleeve to account for the variation in parent bore size that happened in the engine blocks. And when you would rebuild these back in the day, you'd take the cylinder head off and you would check to see what your stampings are in your block, and the parts man would give you appropriately sized sleeves to fit any of the variations that you had in your engine. That all went away when the IH factory parts were all used up. So now we pretty much get what we get. So the C stampings on 1, 2, and 4 mean that these are right in the middle of the range. So it's no wonder those 3 sleeves are still tight. But the E stamp on number 3, that was an oversized hole from the start. So it makes a lot of sense now why this is the one that's been the loosest fit of all. One other thing too, I was surprised in the comments under the last episode how many people weren't aware that these were dry sleeved engines. Farmall H's, Farmall M's, and the subsequent models, 300, 350, 400, etc., are all dry sleeved engines. So a lot of comments saying, well, why didn't that loose sleeve let coolant down in the crankcase, or at the very least you're going to have to pull that sleeve to replace the O-ring at the bottom. Dry sleeves don't come into contact with any coolant, and they don't have any seals. As you can see, they're just a very thin walled replaceable wear surface that slides down into a solid walled block bore. So all the coolant is contained within the engine block. And I know people that have even taken these dry sleeves out and bored these parent bores out even larger, put horrendously oversized pistons in these, and ran them as a super hopped up engine. Now these engine blocks aren't very hard cast, so they don't last very long if you do that. But if you're a tractor puller, I've talked to a few guys that say they don't run for long, but while they do run, they'll pull like crazy. So moving forward, this is going right back in. I see no issue with that at all. The only change is I'll use a little bit of this high temp sleeve retainer, and I mean just a little around the bottom and just a little bit at the top. Where you can run into trouble with that is if you apply too much of it, and then you can have, like was explained in the comments section last time, difficulty driving that sleeve back out of the block. You can damage other things. A little tip with that sleeve retainer, apply about 500 degrees Fahrenheit of heat to it. It re-liquefies it, breaks the bonds. You can slide the pieces back apart with relative ease. Also keep in mind that incorrect head gasket that allowed that sleeve to click up and down and make noise only proved that that's been a slip fit in that block for the last 18 years. Those pieces have nothing more to prove to me. Add to that, if I chose to bite the bullet and do all new sleeves, pistons, rings, custom honed block bores, really fit everything up right, it's a complete engine rebuild. Or if I put the old sleeve back in and for some reason it gives me another problem, it's a complete engine rebuild. We're literally in the same place. So I'm going to put it together and we're going to let her eat. Let's go. All right, new sleeve in. Here's my strategy. I put a little bit of Loctite at the bottom of the parent bore, block bore, and I put a little bit at the top of the sleeve. And the goal is to have both of them come into contact with one another at about the same time. That way you're not trying to, straight fit here, you're not trying to drag Loctite that is setting up down through itself, because I've had these get most of the way before and then all of a sudden they stop moving. So we haven't touched any Loctite yet. I'm lining my paint mark up with the straight ahead, so we reposition the sleeve where it was the last time. I'm just going to push on it with this driver. There we are. It is seated. Just finished measuring protrusion. We're running about 3/1000ths up above the block deck. So that is excellent. New Felpro gasket. And this is the type where it specifically says under that sealer, retorque and sealer required. So the all metal side goes down. Yes, that is labeled up right there. So, and once again, that's the Permatex Super 300 aviation Forma gasket sealant. Works very well on head gaskets. We're following up immediately with the cylinder head. Reason being, I want to get full clamp load on that sleeve before anything starts to fully set up. We can hang that rod back on the crankshaft anytime after this. All right, 2 new fold overs for the rod cap bolts, assembly lube on the bearing. All right, everybody, I kept on going off camera and I got most of the rest of the top end of this engine put together. I didn't bother filming it because, face it, we've been here and we've already seen all this. So manifold back on, carburetor hooked back up, thermostat housing back on, pulled the distributor and distributor drive off to reseal and reinstall the tappet cover. Distributor went back in and I stopped just short of installing the generator because that needs to stay off until the valve cover is on, and the valve cover doesn't go on until I revisit these rocker arms. I still think I'm going to change out the rest of these welded arms for these earlier style forged. I think they're just in better shape, but they all require reconditioning. That's probably going to take another day, and we're out of time for this one. We've had kind of a rain delay going on, which is the reason why I had time to hop back into the shop here. I need to go back to the building site for the next several days and continue working on landscaping up there. So we might bring the camera with for that. So we're not going to get as far as a test run today, unfortunately, but I'll bring you all back after we tidy up the rest of the top end, get all the fluids dumped in, and ready to see if it makes more noise. Hopefully good noise this time, not bad. Time will tell. So I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I hope to see you back next time.